Hello again. 5 chairs for 2 people. That's good. I guess it implies that we can spread ourselves. We thought that as we move towards the end of Fintech Week London, we had to touch on a touchy subject called Brexit, which maybe we don't want to talk about it, but it's there, it's out there, it's done. Some of us are experiencing the challenges of Brexit, particularly those of us who live in Poland. It's interesting because there's a play here which a lot of people have implied might happen, which is that London becomes Singapore by the Thames. And what we mean by that is that basically we'll play the regulatory arbitrage rules to incentivize companies to come to London, to base here with their fintech startup companies and be a bridge between Europe and the rest of the world. And maybe that's what the City of London has been for the past century or more, some would say. But Joanne's kindly joined me to discuss this because there is the politics of payments, there's the politics of finance, and the UK does have a card to play. What card do you think they'll play?
Well, firstly, it's a pleasure to be here to discuss this with you. And I think that we have in the UK, we have, and London in particular, it's definitely provided the launch pad for a huge number of pan-European and now global fintechs, global organisations. And the experience is here. We've got the experience in terms of the talent, the individuals, but also the understanding of how to expand. And then even post-Brexit, the various regulatory institutions, the BIN sponsors who have gone through a huge amount of work and upheaval in creating their continental SEPA equivalence regulations. They had to put that in place because they didn't know the equivalence was going to be in play. So they've got that capability still. So they're still able to provide that support for any organisation who's wanting to create a pan-European proposition. So we've still got that.
So when you look at, because GPS is worldwide, it's not just UK. When you look at Singapore and people talk about, London becomes Singapore by the Thames, what's your reaction to that statement?
So I think Singapore have done, the government's done and the regulators done a fantastic job in establishing themselves as the hub for the Asia-Pac region. When we first got going out in Asia-Pac, it was an absolute natural location for us to create our hub, and it's become a natural solution for so many. The key difference for Singapore versus what we have in Europe is that SEPA passporting. So when you establish yourself as a business, as a fintech offering in Singapore, you're not naturally able to extend that offering. For each market, you're still having to go through finding separate partnerships, separate regulatory approvals, and it's still a much harder exercise to extend an offering outside of Singapore itself.
Yeah, so you kind of got a number of layers there, and that from a Singapore as a regional hub statement, it's not there because Southeast Asia is actually very fragmented and country specific. Mm-hmm. But from Singapore as a global financial centre, and the same with London as a global financial centre, I guess that's where people think the regulatory arbitrage, the mix the rules, it starts to come in.
Well, what Singapore's been able to achieve for itself as a nation state that can lead the way in terms of what's possible in fintech, I think they, they've already become a shining light of what's possible. What you see with the Singapore Fintech Festival, I don't know if you've been to it, but it's a fantastic showcase that's actually led by the Monetary Authority of Singapore. So it's driven by the regulators themselves, which is absolutely fantastic. And what you have is a younger, digitally savvy population that's very dense, that is adopting the new technologies, and so I think it really is a great example as to what can be achieved. And to the point what we were talking about a little bit offline, is we have to be careful when we're talking about London, we're talking about London and not the UK as a whole, because the UK as a whole is still much more sort of diverse and fragmented, whereas Singapore has got that sort of concentration which allows the greater adoption.
Yeah, I think that's a big point, which is when we look at the global landscape, the main centres of the world are Hong Kong, Dubai, New York, Silicon Valley, which has been described by Kjell Nordstrom and others as these are now countries. So London is like a country, and the rest of the UK, I won't say it doesn't matter, but what I find interesting is most of the UK actually has a huge amount of innovation in fintech. And although this is Fintech Week London, we don't talk about Newcastle, Durham, Manchester, Leeds, and Wales and Scotland and the other areas of the UK that has so much innovation as well.
Yeah, the rest of the UK absolutely does matter. But I think the experiences have been different in different parts of the UK. We know full well that the adoption of the Oyster card for the Underground was a pivotal moment, both for London and actually in London leading the world in the adoption of the contactless generally, but other parts of the UK didn't have that experience in the same time frame, and therefore it changed the rate of adoption of contactless payments generally. But what we are seeing is those pockets of innovation in their own right, and there's a number of hubs developing. And we spoke about Newcastle. We've got a great development centre and account management centre of excellence up in Newcastle, and there's a whole ecosystem around that. There's a number of great organisations, and we're seeing that in many other places as well.
So I think there's a couple of things in there, and particularly building on the last panel talking about the pandemic, which is first of all, the hunt for talent. Where is the talent? Not just UK, but worldwide. But secondly, does that talent actually have to be in the office?
Doesn't need to be in the office anymore, does it?
No.
I think that what we're experiencing at GPS is we're expecting to move to a hybrid working going forwards. I think many are talking down similar lines. Most work you're able to do from home. We're working as global teams anyway, so even if you're in the office, you wouldn't be with all of your team. But there is a need to have some form of physical interaction. We've seen it today with the conference, the serendipitous moments of bumping into people and having those unscheduled, impromptu conversations that can spark an idea, a new relationship or something else are so important. Equally, it may be you can do the core of your day job just by being focused and working from home, but the social interaction, the things that bond you to an organisation versus it just being a job, are about the work relationships becoming friendships, and those friendships, those real connections, I think need that physical interaction still.
Yeah, so that still builds on a couple of questions. So, talent. Where do you see the most talented resources?
Oh, that's a big question. I think there's talent everywhere, and that's across all sorts of countries. I think university courses have become so strong everywhere from Vietnam to Bulgaria, or there's just such a huge spread of talent. We should not underestimate what's out there.
So if there's that much talent out there from Bulgaria to Vietnam, what's Britain's strategy?
So I think it's the experience is now key. So if we can to tie new talent to the fintech explicit experience. We've got a number of people now, on the second or third iteration of their fintech journey, and taking that, some of those experiences learned of, what happens if you try to scale too quickly, or what happens if you don't, if you say yes to too much, or you don't reinforce in the foundations of your technology offering. There's lots of lessons learned that are being, we can improve upon for the next time. And, rather than everybody reinventing the wheel, actually mashing the best of both, the best of experience, as well as the new ideas and the latest thinking coming out of the universities is the best way to go.
Yeah, and a couple of points which I think are nuanced but interesting is, for example, the FCA banning Binance as an exchange for cryptocurrencies. So what do you think will happen with cryptocurrencies?
I wouldn't want to be pulled on that one. Where I'm focused with cryptocurrencies is at GPS, we're working with a number of crypto partners where we're able to provide the ability to spend from that crypto wallet in fiat in the real world. So when you're going and paying for a cup of coffee, you can tap your real card that's running on Visa or MasterCard rails, and we're connecting back to those crypto wallets. What's actually happening from a crypto perspective, I'll leave to other people like yourselves. I don't know what you think.
I'm only going down this rabbit hole because it popped into my head. But basically, I think it's really interesting right now between CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies, China taking a move to not only clamp down on cryptocurrencies, but clamp down on fintech like Alipay and Alibaba with the IPO. And the geopolitics, which goes back to, is London going to be the Singapore by the Thames? If you look at the geopolitics, let's step back from the crypto discussion, but how do you see that landscape?
So I think the central bank digital currencies is something that's definitely going to evolve and take come to the fore over time. So yeah, you can't sort of take every sort of comment or everything to do with crypto or blockchain and put it in the same bucket, because there's such a broad spread of topics that it covers. But it's definitely got a role to play. But I'm not putting any wagers on anything specific.
Ever think there'll be a global currency?
I think it makes sense at some point. What my role is within global processing services is to enable the global brands to be able to have a single point of integration with a single platform that can support transactions and customers across multi-regions with a seamless single user experience.
So we haven't talked much about your business, which we should touch on, because you are dealing with many of the visionary and innovator startup and challengers and neobanks out there. So how do you find the demands on your business? I mean, does it vary by constituency and country? Do you see consistency? And where do you see the hotbed of change?
So I think we see a lot of the same themes coming through across geographies. In terms of the actual sort of challenger bank side of things, very much determined by the regulatory appetite. So it's restricted in that way. In terms of financial inclusion and being able to create solutions for those that don't have access to financial services, that's absolutely universal. And it has, in this post-COVID environment, it's absolutely accelerated. I think the digitization of traditional banks, again, is an absolute common theme. I think in other geos, there's more of an appetite for the existing banks to digitize with new partners rather than creating a digital spin-off, which is more what we've seen here. And then other trends such as buy now, pay later, and obviously we've got open banking. We've got replicating across the world. So what our role really is to provide the trust and proven platform that's flexible and configurable that can support innovation. And that's what people are really now starting to understand with us. So rather than sort of going through with traditional banks an RFP process to say, right, we want you to be able to deliver this, and it's all about the time to market and the cost of delivering this proposition, it's like, actually we want to find a partner who can support us on our innovation journey and product roadmap, even though we don't know what's going to be on the product roadmap in a couple of years' time. So prove to us that you've got the credentials to work with us as a partner, and we'll see that partnership evolve on the journey going forward.
And I think it's interesting because we touched on it yesterday when talking offline, but the ecosystem, and these words are thrown around all the time, is government to business to consumer to citizen, and it intrigues me that your company, for example, has almost visible brands out there, fintechs, and yet yours is not as visible as theirs because you're B2B rather than B2C.
Yeah, no, we're very much sort of hidden within the ecosystem. Yeah. We're like I say, the equivalent of the Intel chip inside. It's our customers are out there doing the talking. Our role is to make them successsucable. By doing the heavy lifting, we stay in the background, we do our job, we just work.
And that's the way you do it well.
It works. Thank you.
So let's finish with, because amazingly the time's running away from us. I know you can't predict these things. I try to. But what do you think is going to be the longer term landscape of how Brexit impacts London and Britain in the world structure of finance?
Oh, that's a big question to leave me on, Chris. It's super hard to tell.
Do you think it'll damage the country, or do you think it's going to help the country? I'm not going to ask you if you're a Remainer or a Leaver, but is this going to be something that actually boosts Britain's future?
I'm nervous about it personally. I'm still nervous. I think we've got our work cut out. So what we mustn't do as Londoners and as Brits is rest on our laurels and assume that because we've been leading the world in so many areas to date that will continue, because the rest of whether it's related to Brexit or whether it's in terms of fintech capital generally, so many different countries have put fintech as front and center of their governmental strategies over the next 5-10 years, that they are working super hard, and the leapfrogging will happen, and all sorts of things could happen. So the most important thing is to take things like the Khalifa Review seriously, to make sure that we, because those of us that were involved in contributing to that, we've put a lot of effort into, articulating the needs and getting the points across. I think it was put together, I know lots of people involved in it, it's put together really well, and, it has, it's landed well. I think it's being taken seriously, but actually putting our money where our mouths are and actually implementing those recommendations at speed is super important, because so many other countries have had that opportunity to read that report, take it as a blueprint themselves. We need to make sure that the corridors of Whitehall, we get behind the FCA where there's various things that we're asking to be implemented there. Let's get these new bodies operational as soon as we possibly can.
I could talk to you all day long, Joanne. But apparently I've got to talk to Andrew, Leader, and Gayla. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.